Hi everyone, I'm Kylie, your local science nerd. Today, we'll be going over the different COVID brands being offered in the Philippines to figure out which brand is the best brand. If there is a best brand, keep watching to find out. Before we go into the different brands, let's think first about what are the different things we have to take note of when choosing which brand would be the best brand. Everybody has different criteria for the brands that they're choosing, but if you don't have your own criteria, that's fine. We've prepared a few things that might give you a baseline of what to look for when choosing. The first thing you might want to look for is efficacy. What is the efficacy? And the second thing is, what is that efficacy based on? And by that we mean, what was the clinical trial based on, like locations, number of people, age range of people, the time of when the clinical trial was held, like which time frame. The third thing would probably be the type of vaccine, if you have a preference for a certain type of vaccine, and additional ingredients used in the specific brands. Maybe you're allergic to some of them. And the fourth most important thing on our short list of criteria is, how soon can you even get it? Okay, real quick, we mentioned efficacy, but what even is efficacy? Efficacy is basically how well the vaccine does in a clinical trial, that is, in an ideal or controlled environment. But if we want to be more specific, it's how much the vaccine reduces the risk of infection at an individual level. Please note that every vaccine efficacy is based on their specific clinical trial. So there's no universal standard for efficacy. It's really just the result they got based on their variables, like the location, time, number of people, etc. We mentioned that earlier. Now, keep this in mind when looking at the efficacy of the different brands later on. Efficacy is not to be interchanged with effectiveness, because effectiveness is how well it does in the real world, where everything is kind of uncontrolled and unpredictable, while efficacy again is in the ideal or controlled setup or environment. Alright, now that we're up to speed with the different terminology, let's judge those brands. The first brand is the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, which is the first vaccine approved by the Philippine FDA. And as we mentioned in episode 2, this is an mRNA vaccine, and if you want to know more about those and how they work, go watch the video. Don't know where it'll be linked, but I'll just wave my arms. The vaccine involves 2 shots that will be administered on the upper muscle part of your arm, so like here or here, at least 21 days apart. The second dose can be administered up to 42 days after the first dose. And note that efficacy decreases beyond this 42-day window. That being said though, if you did miss this window, you can still get your second dose, and you should get your second dose. The Pfizer vaccine is known for its very high efficacy rate of 95%, but what is that based on? Pfizer clinical trials involved around 40,000 plus participants who were at least 16 years old. It was held from July of 2020 up to November 2020. It was held in 152 sites, and 130 of those sites were in the United States. So Pfizer was mostly tested in the United States. It is also important to note that the time frame of when they did their clinical trials were before the most severe stages of the pandemic. Out of the thousands that were enrolled in the trial, only 170 got infected with COVID, and 8 of those who were infected were vaccinated with Pfizer, and the remaining 162 were given a placebo of the vaccine. This means that those who had the vaccine are 95% less likely to get COVID than those in the placebo group. Therefore, the vaccine had a 95.3% efficacy rate. Thus, according to their trials, again, a person is 95% less likely to get infected with COVID than someone who is not vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine. Now, like with any vaccine, there are some side effects to getting the shot. Some common ones involve feeling pain, redness, or swelling in the area where you got your shot, which is, on your arm. You may also experience tiredness, headaches, muscle pain, fatigue, fever, nausea. It's not fun, but these only last a few days right after you get your dose. And these are completely normal. It means that your immune system is working. It's wanting to fight and make those antibodies, and the symptoms should go away in a few days. As we've also mentioned in the previous episode though, with Pfizer, it does have polyethylene glycol or PEG, so if you do have allergies to PEG, don't take this vaccine. Ask your doctor for which brand might be better for you. The next vaccine we're going to be talking about is Astrazeneca, which is also the second vaccine that was approved by the Philippine FDA. The Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is a DNA vaccine. Because it is a DNA vaccine, it's a little bit more rugged and stable, so it doesn't require cold storage, which makes it much easier to transport than Pfizer, for example. This brand also requires 2 doses, 8 to 12 weeks apart, and it has an overall efficacy of 70.4% as reported by the DOH. And it also has about 10% efficacy against the B1351 South African strain. Now, the efficacy of this vaccine is based on clinical trials that are held in the UK, Brazil, and the USA. So as you might notice, it's a little bit more spread out location-wise compared to the trials of Pfizer, so maybe that's something that you care about when choosing a vaccine brand. In fact, their most recent clinical trials were held in USA, Chile, and Peru, which got an efficacy of 79%, which is pretty good, but since that's not the overall efficacy, I will just be using the efficacy reported by the DOH, which is 70.4, not the 79%. But of course, we can't talk about this brand without talking about the controversies and issues that come with it, and I'm talking about the blood clotting thing. It does have a name. It's thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome, or TTS for short. And if this is your first time hearing about the blood clotting thing, basically a few of the people that have been vaccinated with AstraZeneca started experiencing this really rare symptom of getting blood clots. And it's been quite the issue because that kind of thing has the really high potential to be fatal, especially if you get blood clots in your brain or your sinuses. But how rare is it exactly? It's 6 per million vaccinations. So quite rare. Scientists found that for whatever reason, these people that get it develop rare antibodies against the PF4 protein in platelets, and platelets are the cells in our blood that are responsible for blood clotting. And so if our bodies have antibodies against that protein, our body's gonna want to fight that, and then the blood clotting just starts to happen for whatever reason. They are still trying to figure out why that happens from the vaccines, or if it is the vaccines causing it for sure, but still, because of its potential to be fatal, no matter how rare it is, many governments around the world have suspended the use of this brand just to be safe. Not our government though, and why is that? To be honest, I don't know. But I will say that the Philippine LGUs typically administer AstraZeneca only to patients aged 60 and above. Now you might be thinking, dang, you're really gonna risk the lives of the elderly? Not really. Strangely enough, this rare symptom is more likely to occur among those aged 50 and below, and more so to those aged 30 and below. Nobody knows why it's the young people, but this is why our government has only restricted the use of this vaccine to the elderly, mostly. And we're not the only country that has made this revision. Germany, Spain, and Netherlands, and a bunch of other countries have also revised their policies so that it's mostly only used for the elderly.
Hello, Editor Mina here. Reliable sources imply that the whole country has this policy, but it turns out only some LGUs are implementing this. Our team found out about this recently when Kylie went to her LGU and got vaccinated with AstraZeneca, and clearly she's not a senior citizen. So if you have any concerns about this, please feel free to express them to the health consultant on site and they can further assist you with your options.
Please note that now that we know that this is a symptom that can occur with AstraZeneca, people that are vaccinated with AstraZeneca are being asked to keep track of their symptoms. So, after the first dose, if nothing bizarre has occurred outside of the common side effects like fatigue, headaches, etc., you're most likely good and can proceed with the second dose. But if you do end up having weird symptoms after your first dose, like shortly after, then please call your doctor immediately and also maybe go to the hospital, because thankfully TTS is treatable and it's better to manage it sooner rather than later. Speaking of controversial vaccines, the next vaccine that we are talking about is Coronavac by Sinovac. It is an inactivated virus vaccine, and if you remember from episode 2, if you watched episode 2, which you really should, this type of vaccine is, in theory, most likely to be the one that is better suited to fight against new strains that might come up. And if you're wondering why, watch episode 2. This vaccine requires 2 doses at 28 days apart, and the efficacy as reported by the DOH is 51%. Kinda doesn't sound too great considering that the minimum requirement for a vaccine to be approved is 50%, so it's like literally the bare minimum. But the efficacy is based on a clinical trial held in, of course, China, Brazil, Turkey, Chile, and Indonesia, so it's quite a wide range of locations. And more recently, I believe they're holding clinical trials in the Philippines as of April. Not sure if they've already started. But here are the controversies and issues surrounding this vaccine that might matter to you. Number 1, Brazil delayed releasing their results after celebrating 50% efficacy. Here is a reenactment of what happened. Hey, we got 50%! 50%! That's great! Can I see your results? Maybe later, but we got 50%. Why not? You just said it's 50%. Can we just see the paper where it says 50%? You will, just not yet. Okay, bro. So as you can see from that very realistic reenactment, it's kind of suspicious why Brazil would withhold results if they said it was 50%. But you know what? Sinovac isn't off the hook either, because when Sinovac applied for approval in the Philippines, they withheld their results from us. They probably submitted them already, considering that we have already been vaccinating people with Sinovac, so it's already approved, but I actually don't know for sure if they ended up turning those in, so... But, you know, it's just suspicious enough to lower people's confidence in the reliability of that company. And there are already so many reasons that people are hesitant to get vaccinated, so it's just not a good look. What adds more fuel to the distrust of Sinovac is our government, honestly. For one thing, for us, the cost of Sinovac is about 3,600 plus pesos, while in Indonesia, it's just about 600 pesos. And in Thailand, the cost is even lower. This makes Sinovac more expensive than Pfizer, and almost as expensive as Moderna. Based on our research, the government can't really give a clear answer as to why the pricing is like that, because of a confidentiality disclosure agreement they have with Sinovac. And honestly, not even sure if it really is 3,600 plus, or if it is a different price. Like, they really can't just be direct with us. But if the pricing is indeed 3,000 something plus, then why the heck is that our preferred vaccine for the country instead of something like Pfizer that has a much higher efficacy rate? The next vaccine that we'll be talking about is Gamaleya, or the Sputnik V vaccine, which is an adenoviral vaccine, much like Astrazeneca. This is also taken in 2 doses, 3 weeks apart. It is reported that this vaccine has an efficacy rate of 97.6%. This was determined through clinical trials from September to November of 2020. The countries where their clinical trials were held were mostly in Russia, Belarus, UAE, India, eventually Venezuela, and right now 64 countries, including us, have approved it for use. However, there are also controversies surrounding this vaccine. This Vaccines Institute published their results in The Lancet, but did not include their raw data. And when it was published in The Lancet, it said 91.6% efficacy. And it's still kind of controversial because it was still approved for use in many countries despite their inconsistent data. It's just really suspicious why people would have to hide things about data. The next vaccine is Janssen by Johnson & Johnson. This is also a viral vector vaccine like AstraZeneca and Sputnik V. It is unique in that it only requires 1 shot, which makes it really good for people who are afraid of needles. It has an efficacy rate of 66.3%, and this is based on clinical trials with participants at least 18 years old held from September of 2020 to January of 2021. And unlike Pfizer, you might note that this is the time frame where the pandemic was at its worst, and if not at its worst, at least in the very severe stages of the pandemic. And by having their clinical trial within this time frame, they were able to capture the efficacy against new variants around the world. 44% of their clinical trials were in the United States, 41% were in Central and South America, and 15% were in South Africa. The common side effects from this vaccine are again similar to the others, but again, like the other DNA vaccine, it also has the problem of the blood clotting thing, TTS. We've already gone over that one, so I won't really go over issues with TTS anymore. With J&J, there have been cases of people fainting right after getting the vaccine, but that's kind of unclear as to whether it was from the vaccine or if they were just nervous about needles, because again, like we mentioned earlier, those who are afraid of needles are more likely to opt for the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So maybe they were just really freaked out by the needle and might have passed out from it. Anyway, that's also kind of uncommon and generally not that serious. J&J does have polysorbate, so if you are allergic to polysorbate, do not take this brand of vaccine. The last brand that we'll be going over is the Moderna vaccine. Honestly, out of all the vaccines that we've talked about, this one and Pfizer are the ones that are most popular with the crowd. They are transparent with their info and the efficacy rates are high, so it's kind of expected that a lot of people would like to wait for the Moderna vaccine instead of getting some of the other brands that are currently being offered at the moment. It is an mRNA vaccine, much like Pfizer, also administered in 2 doses, 28 days apart. Same side effects as the other vaccines with the headaches, fatigue, etc., but maybe a little bit more emphasis on the swelling on the upper part of the arm. There seem to be more reports of that symptom in particular with Moderna. It also has PEG or polyethylene glycol, so again, if you're allergic to that, don't get this brand. You are considered allergic if you have a reaction within 4 hours of getting the first dose. A reaction meaning hives or swelling or uncontrollable wheezing. It has a 94.5 efficacy rate, and the average age of participants for their clinical trials were about 51 years old, and 24% of those participants were aged 65 or older. The results of their clinical trials showed high efficacy rates for different ages, sex, and race. However, the efficacy rate of Moderna does drop to about 86% for those aged 65 and older, which is still a really good efficacy rate. Other than the PEG allergy thing, there's not much drama with Moderna. So we're done. There are actually 2 vaccines that we did not include in this video. One is the Bharat Biotech vaccine, which we didn't include because honestly we just forgot to research about it. We don't really hear people talking about it that much, so it kind of slipped our mind to research for it, and we're behind in schedule, so we just didn't. But anyway, if you really do want to know about that brand, you can go check the DOH's fast facts on it. The second one not in this video is Novavax, which we did not include again because we ran out of time, and 2 because it's not even approved in our country yet. I believe the company hasn't even submitted an application to want to be approved. I don't know anything about if they're even done with their clinical trials, so we just didn't include it in this video. The answer to the question you've all been waiting for: which of these brands is the best vaccine brand? I don't have any drums, so I'm gonna make my own drum roll. All of them. To be more specific, which one of them you can get your hands on first. Look, if you're really not leaving your house or interacting with anyone from the outside, not even getting delivery or anything, and you want to wait and wish that your LGU somehow provides the specific brand that you want, then go ahead, wait and pray for it. But if you have any hope for living normally again, and you don't want to be the one wishing that you got it sooner, get it before it's too late. Get it before you regret it. And I don't know if you know, but only 1% of the Philippines is fully vaccinated. And at that rate, it's gonna take us about 8 years before we can achieve herd immunity.
Hi, it's me again. Kylie actually meant that it would take us 1.8 years to achieve herd immunity, not 8. She got it mixed up with another statistic. Sorry about that.
But if you do have the privilege of choosing, then yeah, consult your doctor to really be sure of which brand would be the best brand for you, especially if you know that you already have underlying health issues. But if not, then you can just use your own personal criteria for picking which one is best for you. And again, we suggest to you that you pick whichever one you can get your hands on first. The main purpose of a vaccine anyway is to prevent serious illness or hospitalization. And most, if not all of the vaccines that are approved in the Philippines right now, except for Janssen, have 100% efficacy against severe COVID. So, just go get it. Register at your LGU or get it from your work, whichever one can get it to you faster, or, just sign up for both and then just get which one comes faster. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Let's please work together in getting the Philippines to becoming COVID free. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.